Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh and good day. So we are the group 2 and we're going to report about perspective on teaching and learning. So here are the members of the group 2. So I am Sahaila Sokor, Johanisa Sultan, and our leader Riham Barawang, and Siti Ilham Bashir and Jawahir T. Samanuddin. So here are the topic that we will going to discuss. First one is overview of educations and healthcare, concepts of teaching, learning, education's process, vis-a-vis nursing process, historical foundations for the teaching role of a nurse as a health educator, hallmarks of effective teaching, and lastly, principles of good teaching practice in undergraduate education. So, overview of educations and healthcare. So, health educations from the word health educations refers to act of providing informations and learning experience for the purposes of behavior change and improve for health of the client. So, educations and health care today is both patients educations, human nursing staff, student education. So, actually, teaching is a very important aspect for every professionals, including us nurses professional role. So the current trends in healthcare are making it essential that the clients can be prepared to assume responsibility of self-care management. Bakit? So a self-care management is a way that the person can actually handle his own self. So kasi 'di ba, for example is nasa hospital setting tayo, nagpo-provide tayo ng care sa client. So pag nag-discharge na siya, ay hindi naman pwede na habang buhay mo siyang pagsisilbihan until up in his home. So you have to teach him the way to take care of his self. So you have to provide informations that can help to improve his health. So first one is patients and staff educations are important in nursing practice since educations empowers patients to improve their health status when patients are involved in their care, they are more likely to engage interventions that may increase their chance to positive outcome. So also families and patients must be prepared to assume responsibilities for self-care. Why is that? Because actually our family is the one who will take care of us, who will taking care of us after we admit in the hospital, for example. So yeah, self-care encourage also this is to maintain healthy relationship with your own self. So you have also this demand for nursing and nurse as educator continues, which is in changing healthcare system. So most commonly, a nurse is one of who are providing health teaching and patients educations, which is it is a significant part of a nurse's job. So educations is actually empowers patients to improve their health status. So the Joint Commissions on Accreditations of Healthcare, which is actually established during nursing standards for patient education. So what is actually this commission? So this was actually founded during 1951. So it is commission seeks to continuously improve healthcare for the public. So in collaborations with other stakeholders, also evaluating their healthcare organizations and actually inspiring to excel providing safe and effective care for the highest quality and value. So secondly, the Patient's Bill of Rights established the patient's right to receive complete and current information about diagnosis, yung mga treatment, prognosis, and other understandable ways. So it is actually a right of a patient to have a authentic informations about the current result of his status. So it must be implied completely for also as based on the medical health records of the client. So lastly, to accomplish these goals, nurses need to be trained and prepared provide patient educations. So of course, a nurse must be smart. So he have to adopt his goal on the patient's health status to attain health improvement. So let us proceed to the purpose, benefits, and goals of patient, staff, and student education. So what is the purpose of these health educations and the client? So to increase competence and confidence of clients to manage their own self and of staff and students to deliver high quality care of one. So one of the purpose of this is to have health education is that for the client's satisfactions and confidence. So para ma-improve ang kanyang health. So papaano? You are providing informations that typically mag-gain ng kumpiyansa na gagaling ang isang client. So, nextly, benefits of educations to client. So, first one is increased consumer satisfactions. So, the more your clients know, the more you can get from your product. So, you are building actually a strong sense of loyalty by educating them. So, actually, example is companies who invest in the educations of their clients tend to see much longer term success than their competitors. So nextly, improves quality of life. So just like I've said earlier that it gains improvement of a person's health. So thirdly, ensure continuity of care. So continuity of care is actually approach to ensure that the patient-centered care team is cooperatively involved on ongoing healthcare management. So continuity also promotes patient safety and assures quality of care over time. So example is administered medication. So in the hospital setting, after discharge, the client will continue his medications. So reduces also incidence of illness complications. So whereas perhaps there is a possible complication that might be minimized, like the chronic disease. So it will prevent. So actually increase compliance with treatment. So taking medications as prescribed or medications adherence, for example. This is actually for controlling chronic conditions, yung mga treating temporary conditions, and overall long-term health and well-being. So, nextly, decrease clients' anxiety. So, yung mga possible na situations na actually maisip ng isang client can actually lower his anxiety when you are providing health educations to him. Kasi di ba most commonly nagkakaroon ng mga anxiety is yung mga matatanda. So giving education to them can actually decrease their anxiety. So lastly, maximize independence. So what is this? So the independent patient is actually capable of managing his or her life and medication. So the freedom of care of herself, himself, and be independent of other people's and the patient's life get more easier. So nextly is benefits of educations to staff. So first one is enhanced job satisfactions. That is because educations is actually the key to better jobs. So highly skilled jobs that acquire an understanding of technology, yung mga communication skills, yung mga human relationships, and nuisance. So also improve therapeutic relationships. So active patients involvement through therapeutic patient's education. So it is considered relevant strategy. So in educating the effects of just like example effects of the medications. So the therapeutic, the administered side effect, and also increase autonomy in practice. So autonomy can increase by strategies incorporate unique knowledge and actually expertise of a nurse into the clinical patient's care. So clarifying expectations that valuable nursing knowledge and should be applied. So also improve knowledge and skills. So this one is education. Education give us a knowledge of the world around us. So it change into something better and get more easy. So nextly, of course, benefits of preceptor education for nursing student. So first one is prepared clinical preceptor. So through preceptorship, the students actually improve hands-on practice and also magde-develop siya ng understanding of relevant care process, yung mga nursing practice, or thereby bridging theory-practice gap. So nextly, continuity of teaching, learning from classroom curriculum. So this means education implies teaching and learning to students in the university or even the classroom curriculum. So, pwede nila may pasa sa next generations yung mga natutunan nila. So, also evaluations and improvement for student clinical skills. So, this evaluates experiences, yung mga experiences ng mga students, also utilize knowledge, yung mga practice skills, and also clinical decisions during actual or client, patient's care. So, what is the goal of this? So, all in all, this is to increase self-care responsibility of clients and also to improve the quality of care delivered by nurses. So, the goal of health education is positively influence the health behavior of individual and communities, or also as well as the living and working conditions that actually influence their health. So to be effective health educator, nurses need skills in planning, also implementing attractive and effective programs. So they also need to develop yung mga skills, yung mga evaluating effectiveness, yung mga evaluating effectiveness of their efforts, also to emphasize the impact. And also para ma-engage ang mga client na i-adapt sa kanilang sarili na sa kanilang kalagayan by helping them to educate. This will actually improve their health. So let us proceed to definition of terms. So first one is education process, which is education process similar to nursing process and also involve assessment, yung mga assessment, planning, also yung mga implementations and evaluation phase. So secondly, teaching or instruction. So example is such a method including lecture, yung mga group discussions, or yung mga one-to-one instructions or demonstrations or simulations or role playing. So self-instructions also. So nextly, yung learning. So knowledge or skill acquired by instructions or study or people of good education and considerable learning. So also patient education. So patient education can be defined by this process of influencing patients, yung mga behavior and producing the changes in knowledge, yung mga attitudes and skills and necessary also the improvement of their health. So example given is a one-to-one teaching, yung mga just like the yung mga na-demonstrate mo, yung mga analogies of pictures explain, and also lastly yung staff education. So this one is teaching staff is referred to the professionals or actually personnel directly involved in teaching students, so including classroom teachers and special educations.
Okay, so Assalamualaikum. My name is Janisa Sultan and it is my part to discuss to you the concepts of teaching, learning, education process with Avis nursing process, and the historical foundations for the teaching role of a nurse. So first, let us discuss what is education process. So education process is a systematic, sequential, logical, scientifically based, planned course of action. So education process has steps that is coherently done. So later malalaman lang natin kung ano-ano itong mga steps na ito. So education process consists of two major interdependent operations. We have teaching and learning. So they are interdependent in a sense na there will be no learning if walang teaching and there will be no teaching if walang tuturuan. Okay, if walang magle-learn. So in the process, it also involves two major interdependent players. We have the educator, or our teacher, or the instructor, And we also have our learner, the student, our educand, or in our case, the patient. So, education process has a framework for a participatory shared approach to teaching and learning. So, in teaching and learning process, participation is a must for both the educator and the educand. Okay? Kasi, let's say for example, I am the nurse educator and I will educate my patient about his or her condition. So, I'll tell my patient na he or she should avoid these types of food and avoid these kinds of activity. But if my patient will neglect whatever I say and will not participate, then most probably my patient will not get treated kasi ayaw niyang mag-participate. And the same thing goes sa school setting, di ba? If ayaw mag-participate ng student, then most probably the student will not learn anything kasi hindi siya makadevelop ng skills or makagain ng knowledge kasi ayaw niyang mag-participate. Hindi siya willing mag-participate. So, participation is a must in education process kasi that participation will help us, or that's the one will help us grow. And then next, this very practice is similar across the practice of many health professions. Okay, so education process can be compared to nursing process. So, why man nako-compare ang education process sa nursing process? So, nako-compare siya because yung steps sa education process run parallel to the steps na meron sa nursing process. So, if we can recall, we have 4 steps sa nursing process. We have the assessment, planning, implementation, and evaluation. So what do you think is the difference between the education process and the nursing process? So yung pinagkaibahan ng dalawang process na ito is actually their focus. Kasi sa nursing process, they are more focused on planning and the implementation of care based on the physical and psychosocial needs of our client. Sa education process, okay, their focus is the planning and implementation of teaching based on our clients' learning needs, readiness to learn, and learning styles. So, sa planning step, sa nursing process, we develop care plan based on mutual goal setting to meet individual needs of our client. Sa education process, we are going to develop teaching plan that is based on the mutually predetermined behavioral outcomes to meet the individual or our patient or our student or learner's needs. And in implementation, sa nursing process, we carry out nursing care interventions using standard procedures, and in education process, we perform the act of teaching using specific instructional methods and tools, like for example, yung paggamit ng mga visual aids or ng PowerPoint to teach. So that is how the implementation of teaching is done. And then for the evaluation sa nursing process, we evaluate by determining the physical and psychosocial outcomes of our patient. And sa education process, we determine the behavior changes or outcomes in knowledge and attitudes as well as the skills in our educand. So take note na learning or the teaching is effective kapag yung tinuro mo sa educand or sa learner mo is tumatak yun sa kanyang utak or pumasok siya sa kanyang utak and naging apparent yun sa kanyang behavior and attitude. Okay? Yung na-learn niya is gi-integrate niya sa kanyang actions, behaviors, and attitude. So, pag na-observe mo yon, then learning took place. Okay? Your teaching is effective. Now, take note, itong steps na ito, they are done coherently. Okay, so first we have to assess before we plan before we implement, and implement before we evaluate. So, yan yung steps na kailangan natin gawin systematically, okay? Coherently. So, Okay, so let us now proceed sa concept ng teaching and learning. So again, education process consists of two interdependent operations. We have teaching and learning. So what exactly is teaching? So teaching is a deliberate interventions that involve sharing of information and experiences to meet intended learning outcomes in the cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domains according to an education plan. When we say cognitive, this deals with our intellectual side of learning. When we say affective, this is a domain that includes objectives relating to our interest, attitude, and values relating to learning the information. And when we say psychomotor, this domain focuses on our motor skills and actions that require physical coordination. Now, teaching can be formal or informal. So, when are the times that teaching can be formal and when it is informal? So, teaching is formal kapag pinlano mo yung pagtiteach mo. Like for example, you will hold an event that aims to promote or raise awareness about a certain subject matter. So yan ay isang example ng formal teaching. Okay, so nagiging informal ang teaching when, like for example, you come across a certain person and then ask you about a certain subject matter, and then you teach them to enlighten them. So that is an example of an informal teaching. Now, teaching is triggered when the need to learn cues are present. So what are the need to learn cues are? So these are verbal requests. Okay, so verbal request, like for example, your patient asked you to teach him kung paano may iwasan ang ganitong ganyang sakit. And then question, kapag nag-ask sa'yo yung patient mo, kung like for example, para saan ba itong gamot? Or ano ba yung benefits nitong gamot? So, ganyan. So, we answer them to enlighten them. And also, we have here yung puzzled or confused look, the blank stare, the gesture of defeat or frustration. Now, teaching is a highly versatile strategy that can be applied in preventing, promoting, maintaining, or modifying a wide variety of behaviors in a learner who is receptive and motivated. We use teaching to prevent illness. We use teaching to promote health, maintain sanitation, or modify a wide variety of behaviors in a learner who is capable of learning and who is willing to learn. Okay? Kasi, what is the point of teaching kung yung learner mo or yung educand mo is not capable of learning and is not willing at all? So, walang papupuntahan yung teaching mo kung hindi rin, willing yung learner mo na mag-learn. Now, when we say learning, this is a change in behavior that can be observed or measured and that occurs at any time or in any place as a result of exposure to environmental stimuli. This is an action by which knowledge, skills, and attitudes are consciously or unconsciously acquired. Now, when are we going to say that a learning took place? Okay, so masasabi lang natin that someone has learned kapag yung tinuro mo sa kanya is tumatak sa kanyang utak and naging evident yung or naging apparent sa kanyang attitude or behavior yung kanyang mga na-learn. Now, here's a question for you guys. How would we know if the nurse's endeavors in teaching is successful? Or what are the measures that we are going to consider saying that the teaching is successful? Nasusukat ba yan sa dami ng content na shinare mo? Or nasusukat siya sa kung gaano kadami yung na-learn ng patient mo or yung educand mo sa'yo? So actually, nasusukat yung success ng teaching kapag maraming na-learn sa'yo yung educand mo or yung patient mo. Hindi nasusukat yung success ng teaching sa dami ng shinare mo or sa dami ng pinrepare mo na cards or visual aids. Hindi doon siya nasusukat. Nasusukat siya sa kung gaano karami yung na-learn sa'yo nung learner, yung educand, or yung pasyente mo. Okay, So what is this Assure model? Para saan ba itong Assure model na ito? Now, this model is actually a useful paradigm that is originally developed to help nurses para mag-organize and carry out the education process. So, this Assure model is actually appropriate for use by all health professionals. Now, the acronym Assure actually stands for A. Analyze the learner. S. State the objectives. S. Select instructional methods and materials. U. Use instructional methods and materials. R. Require learner performance. And E. Evaluate or revise the teaching plan. Okay, now, so why do we have to analyze the learner? Now, it is important to analyze the learner because this will help us, educators or nurse educators, instructors, teachers to create a plan to help the learner or patient to succeed. Now, a classical learner analysis help analyze a learner's strengths and weaknesses in order to help them grow and succeed. Now, why do we have to state our objectives? So, articulating or stating our objectives will help instructors, nurse educators, to select and organize course content and determine the types of assessments and learning activities to build for a course. And then next, we have to select instructional methods and materials. Like for example, yung paggamit ng mga PowerPoints or visual aids, mga cards, brochures para mag-teach. And the next, you use instructional methods and materials. Okay, yung paggamit ng mga selected instructional methods and materials mo. And then we have to require learner performance or we have to make them participate. Next, we have to evaluate or revise the teaching plan in order for us to get our intended outcome. Okay, so let us now proceed on the historical foundation for the teaching role of a nurse. Now, yung role ng isang nurse as educator is deeply entrenched in the growth and development of the profession. Now, since the mid-1800s, when nursing was first acknowledged as a unique discipline, the responsibility for teaching has been recognized as an important role of nurses as caregivers. Now, the focus of teaching efforts by nurses has been on educating other nurses for professional practice. So, di ba before, hindi naman kasama sa practice ng nurse ang education, but then nakitaan to siya ng importansya. Yung pag-i-educate ng nurse sa isang patient kasi before we only assist a patient to recover. So, since yun nga, nakitaan ng importansya ang patient education, so sinama siya sa trabaho ng isang nurse. Sinama siya sa nursing practice. Now, as early as 1918, the National League of Nursing Education or yung NLNE in the United States na ngayon ay ang National League for Nursing NLN observed the importance of health teaching as a function within the scope of nursing practice. Kaya naman noong 1950, yung NLNE had identified courses or course content in nursing school curricula para i-prepare yung mga nurses to assume the role of a teacher. Okay, so the American Nurses Association or the ANA has for years put forth statements on the functions, standards, and qualifications for nursing practice of which patient teaching is a key element. And also, yung International Council of Nurses or yung ICN has long endorsed the nurse's role as educator to be an essential component of nursing care delivery. Also, yung the Joint Commission, yung JC or formerly the Joint Commission on Accreditation of Healthcare Organizations or the JCAHO established nursing standards for patient education as early as 1993. So, positive outcomes of patient care are to be achieved by nurses through teaching activities. Okay? That must be kailangan patient and family-oriented yung patient education. So, we also have here the Patient's Bill of Rights and this was first developed noong 1970 by the American Hospital Association. So it establishes the guidelines to ensure the patients receive complete and current information about their condition. And then next, noong 2006, the Institute for Healthcare Improvement announced the 5 Million Lives campaign. Now, the campaign has 5 major implications for teaching patients and their families, as well as nursing staff and students, the ways they can improve care to reduce injuries, save lives, and decrease costs of healthcare. So, importante na ma-include nga naman talaga yung patient education sa nursing practice kasi unusually nakikipag-ugnayan sa patient. So, paano mamimaintain yung patient yung kanyang health if hindi natin sila tuturuan kung paano nila mapaprevent yung mga ganong illness at kung paano nila mapopromote yung kanilang health.
Assalamualaikum, ladies and gentlemen. I am Jawahir T. Samanuddin from Group 2 reporting the role of nurse as health educator. So when we say role of nurse educator, it is the way nurse educators inspire, teach, and mentor their community and the next generation of nurses, leading the way to the future of patient care. Without them, graduating nurses could be ill-equipped to face the ever-changing demands of today's dynamic healthcare system. So the best nurse educators take time to invest in their students and teams at a personal level. They prepare aspiring nurses for the transition to the real world, and their efforts don't stop at graduation. Many nurse educators continue mentoring and advising nurses throughout their career. So, what is nurse educator? Nurse educator usually hold an advanced degree or either a masteral or doctoral. They are often employed by universities but are also found in hospital or clinical setting where they keep nurses up to date on the latest needs in healthcare and patient care. So instead of dedicating their career exclusively to patient care, a nurse educator is passionate about teaching and advocating for nurses. They instruct aspiring nurses and offer guidance, which may include training in both practical and educational settings. So here are some basic or fundamental points that nurse should consider during health education. To gain confidence of people, to arouse the interest in people about good health, of course you will need that so that your student or participants will be actively cooperative. To motivate them to bring about changes in habits in healthy living. Of course, as a health educator, you need to make them stop their habits such as smoking or eating unhealthy foods. And then to develop sense of responsibility among people towards good health of the whole community so that they could be more alert and responsible to their self to maintain a good health. And then to motivate or encourage them to use of health services. Of course, they should know that in any case that they will have health problems, there are several health services that they could go to. And then select the subject matter according to need. You should be specific with the subject matter that you are going to teach and make sure that it is relevant and understandable to your audience. Use appropriate audiovisual aids for a more effective way of learning. It should be planned and continuous, and implementation based on learning for a more effective way of learning. And then nurses should come forward and take the sufficient participation and cooperation of government and voluntary agencies is essential for health education. This is to avoid problems that can be destructive while having your health teaching, and effective communication should always be maintained. You should always answer queries from your students and ask them in return some questions to see if they are learning something from you. So according to the National Council of State Boards of Nursing, a nurse educator's duties is categorized into 3 main roles, which is the collaborator, director of student learning, and role model. So the first one is the collaborators. Nurse educators are collaborators, which means they can work with another person or group in order to achieve or do something related to health. They are capable of bringing others together and building partnerships. Aside from nursing staff, they coordinate student learning with professors across all disciplines. And nurse educators prepare students to work as a team in an environment where collaborative relationships have been directly linked to better patient outcomes. And then the next one is the Director of Student Learning. The Director of Student Learning encourages development of staff, program, and curriculum. A faculty member in this role should have graduate level courses in education as well as nursing. So this one is engaged with the role of nurse educator as a faculty or as a part of institution to help aspiring nurses. And then the next one is role model. We have two for the role models for students and role model for faculties. And then the role model for students, nurse educators provide ongoing mentorship and serve as example to students through various stages of hands-on learning. It's an especially important role in clinical development where students look to their teachers for feedback on patient interaction, decision-making, and health assessment. And then, of course, role model for faculty. Seasoned nurse educators serve as role model for newer faculty as well. So by spearheading a culture of learning, nurse educators can inspire each other to improve the delivery of nurse education. So we have nurse as educator in different aspects. So first one, you have here nurses' role in educating patients and families. So educating patients and families is fundamentally the most important role of the nurse. Of course, we should always start with ourselves and our family. Nurse should build foundational knowledge, structure content, and simplify concept. Select right approach, organize care routine with calendars, plan for more time as needed to provide the instruction in small doses yet more frequently. So nurses should always provide a foundational knowledge that is easy to understand to their families. So in community colleges and universities, it is where nurse educators teach in a traditional setting. So here they instruct others using a curriculum they have created and find new ways to engage students. These teaching strategies are grounded in educational theory and evidence-based practices. So effective nurse educators are passionate, lifelong learners who work to keep up with changing techniques in technology, medicine, and teaching. And the next one, role of a faculty nurse educator. Not only teachers but also nurse educators serve as administrators, advisors, clinical coaches, lab instructors, mentors to new faculty members, course developers, researchers, and more. Balancing all those duties required of an educator can be always tricky, especially as a member of university faculty. It is also crucial that a faculty works together as a team, sharing the load and providing students with a truly exceptional nurse education. So these two can be similar to each other, but this one states that nurse alone can be an educator, even though she or he is not labeled as an instructor or professor. The nurse educator in a hospital setting. So a nurse educator's role looks a bit different in a hospital setting rather than instructing students who are at the beginning of their nurse education. These educators support working registered nurses through experiential learning. So being a nurse educator at the hospital means you are not just going to mentor the students who are on duties but also those co-nurses or newly registered nurses to have an experiential learning as mentioned here. And another one is fostering growth. Nurse educators work with their team and other staff to assess each student's capabilities. This gathering of information combined with direct observations allows them to provide feedback on ways the student can improve within the healthcare setting. So just as the nurse educator's role is to teach students, they also need to assess them to see their capabilities and improvements. So some areas of student evaluation that a nurse educator could use is when students can already independently implement and follow up on nursing interventions, or when they are already able to accurately document patient history, status, diagnosis, actions, and or summary of care. In addition to student development, nurse educators also support the professional growth of healthcare teams. This often involves arranging team building exercises and educational seminars for nursing staff and colleagues. And then role of nurse educator in research. Researchers, when it comes to research, nurse educators serve as advisors, collaborators, and patient advocates. They are an excellent resource for nurses who are working on clinical research, answering questions and ensuring that patients receive the protection they need. Therefore, they are also relevant in clinical researches. And then another one is servant leaders. Nurse educators lead by example as they support and guide nurses during transitional periods. They serve with ethical conviction and professionalism, encouraging their team to do the same. Through their actions, nurse educators are responsible for creating a team that communicates well and works together, improving patient care along the way. Nurse educators and staff retention. Since nurse educator helps support the development of new staff, more professionals in this role can help alleviate turnover, with nearly 1 out of every 5 new nurses quitting their jobs within the first year. On-the-job support is needed, so one of their roles is to lessen or minimize the number of nurses quitting their jobs to have a strong staff retention. And then, the last but not the least, creating a positive culture. Nurse educators are essential in creating a positive work environment. When they do their job well, their team is more likely to stay, decreasing turnover rates and giving everyone a win. So the bottom line here is nurses that feel heard, understood, and supported are more likely to stay in their position and thrive and have a positive work environment and positive culture. That's all, and thank you.
Hi, my name is Siti Elhanan Bashir, and I'm going to discuss about the hallmarks of effective teaching in nursing. So there are 6 types of hallmarks that indicates an effective teaching in nursing. So these are the professional competence, interpersonal relationship with students, teaching practices, personal characteristics, evaluation practices, and availability to students. So the first one is professional competence. So the meaning of professional is one highly skilled in a particular field or occupation conforming to the technical or ethical standards of a profession. So the second one is competence. The quality of being capable with enough skill. So for the professional competence, an educator must have a true knowledge in subject matter. An educator must also polish skills throughout her career and also maintains and expands her knowledge in reading, research, clinical practice, and continuing education. And an educator must also portray excellent clinical skills and judgment to become a positive role model for learner. So for interpersonal relationship with students, an educator must have a personal interest in learners, sensitivity to the needs of the learners. An educator must be fair with his students, with her or his students, and also it has a 3 basic therapeutic approaches, which is emphatic listening, acceptance, and honest communication. So educator must be sensitive to their students' feelings and problems, and also to convey respect for them. So it's also important for an educator to be accessible for conferences, and also an educator must be fair and permitting learners to express differing points of view. So for the third one is personal characteristics. So these are the following characteristics for an effective teaching in nursing. Having these qualities such as personal magnetism, enthusiasm, cheerfulness, self-control, patience, flexibility, a sense of humor, a good speaking voice, self-confidence, and willingness to admit errors, and a caring attitude are all desirable characteristics to an educator. So the fourth one is the teaching practices. So these teaching practices define the mechanics, methods, and skills in classroom and clinical teaching. So an educator must be flexible. So for the fifth one is evaluation practices. So it is valued by students, including clearly communicating expectations, providing timely feedback on student progress, correcting students tactfully, being fair in the evaluation process, and giving tests that are pertinent to the subject matter. And for the last one is being available to students, or availability to students. So this may take the form for educators of being there in stressful classroom and clinical situations, physically helping students to give nursing care, and giving an appropriate amount of supervision, and freely answering questions and acting as a resource person during clinical learning experiences.
Good day and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I will be your last reporter. My name is Riham Barwang, and I will be discussing to you principles of good teaching practice in undergraduate. So, for this topic, I will be discussing to you the 7 principles for good practice in undergraduate education. We have encouraged contact between students and faculty, develop reciprocity and cooperation among students, encourage active learning, give prompt feedback, emphasize time on task, communicate high expectations, and last, respect diverse talents and ways of learning. So these 7 principles for good practice in undergraduates tend to be a guideline sa mga faculty members, students, and sa mga administrators para ma-improve yung way ng pagtuturo ng mga teachers as well the learnings of the students. So first, let's start with encourage contact between students and faculty. Frequent interaction with faculty members is more strongly related to satisfaction with college than any type of involvement, or indeed any other students or institutional characteristics. So, encouraging contact between faculty and student establish reports between the two. So, frequent student-faculty contact in and out of classes is isa sa mga important factor na nag-encourage sa mga students to do better and make themselves involved sa mga activities sa school. So this kind of relationship between student and faculty does not end there. May mga instances din talaga na students or teachers could deeply touch the students' life by simply giving them words of wisdom, encouragement, and little push through sa contact between student and teachers. So next, we have develop reciprocity and cooperation among students. So students' academic performance and satisfaction at college are tied closely to involvement with faculty and other students around substantive work. So we have developed reciprocity and cooperation among students. So learning is enhanced when it is more like learning in a team rather than a solo race and a competition between students. So to attain good learning, like a good work, kailangan ng collaborative and social and not competitive and isolated environment. So working with others increases sense of involvement sa mga student, especially when they share their ideas and they react to the ideas of others. So na-improve nito yung thinking skills nila and nagwa-widen yung understanding nila. In that way, na-attain natin yung good learning through their cooperation. Nakakabuo tayo ng healthy learning system sa mga learners natin. So, activities with cooperation and among activities that includes cooperations, could include like yung mga group reportings, group projects, and the likes. Next, we have encourage active learning. Learning is not a spectator sport. To internalize learning, student must talk about what they are learning, write reflectively about it, relate it to past experiences, and apply it to their daily lives. When we say active learning, what do we mean by that? So let us not fool ourselves. We students don't learn so much by only listening to our teacher and by answering our assignments. So we need more than just sitting in our chairs, listening to teachers and answering questions and assignment. So mas may natutunan talaga tayo sa active way of learning such that ginashare natin yung sa class kung ano ba yung natutunan natin, ano yung learnings natin, paano natin siya mai-relate sa past experiences natin, ano yung mali-learn natin sa past experience natin na mai-relate natin sa learnings natin, and kung paano natin i-apply yung learning sa daily lives natin. So, in that way, mas may natututunan tayo sa mga students because they don't just only, we just don't only listen, but we also impart what we have learned. So next, we have provide effective and prompt feedback. Recognizing and understanding gaps of knowledge will help guide student learning. So, dito naman sa giving prompt feedback, personally sa akin, very important to as a student because when the teacher gives their feedback sa mga works natin as students, natututunan natin or nalalaman natin kung saan tayo dapat mag-focus and kung saan less tayo magbibigay ng focus natin. Nalalaman din natin yung strengths natin and weaknesses natin by sa simple na feedback na binibigay ng mga teachers natin. So, in that way, nabibigyan tayo ng opportunity to improve with the suggestions na binibigay ng mga teachers natin sa feedbacks nila. Next, we have emphasis time on task. Time plus energy is equals to learning. Learning to use one's time well is critical for students and professionals alike. Allocating a realistic amount of time means effective learning for students and effective teaching for faculty. So, emphasizing time on task. Now, this is a very important to both students and sa mga faculty. For the students to learn the concept of time management, they need help from their teacher. So, allocating realistic time in doing activity could mean effective learning for the student and effective teaching sa mga teachers because they are working together efficiently towards a common goal sa time frame na ibinigay ng teacher. 6, we have communicate high expectation. Expect more and you will get it. High expectations are important for everyone. For the poorly prepared, for those unwilling to exert themselves, and for the bright and well-motivated. Expecting students to perform well becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So, sabi nga nila, expect more and you get more. Kapag ikaw as an educator and you communicate with your students na ito yung activity nyo, and I am expecting a lot sa magiging output ninyo, students will take it as a challenge and driving motivation na kailangan mag-exert sila ng extra effort para ma-meet nila yung high expectation mo. So in the end, it will eventually result both satisfaction sa work ng student and mamimit din yung expectation ng teacher. And lastly, we have respect diverse talents and ways of learning. So many roads led to learning. Different students bring different talent and style to college. Students need opportunities to show their talent and learn in ways that work for them. Then, they can be pushed to learn in new ways that do not come so easily. So, respect diverse learning. This statement is very self-explanatory. Each of us student differs in way of learning. As they say, there are many roads in learning. You cannot expect na si student A is ganito yung approach of learning niya, doesn't apply sa lahat ng student mo. So students needs the opportunity to show their talents and learn in ways that works for them. Then they can be pushed to learning in new way that do not come easily.